Hi folks. So I've decided to make a video about my concerns about David Icke. He's really quite well known in many circles. Um, just to give a sort of brief history of him before I go into it more. He became famous many years ago. He was a player, I believe, for a football club, Coventry, and he had some ill health at the time and had to retire earlier from that, but then was picked up by the BBC and was a sports broadcaster for them. And he was sort of not really famous, but he was fairly well known and had a fairly successful career with that. And until it became that he got interested, I think, in other kind of things. He sort of got more into environmentalism and into what you might call sort of spiritual science, I suppose. Well, he became the national spokesperson for the UK Green Party between 1988 and 1991. And he describes in his books from around this time as having a presence during that time, which he talked to. And it was some sort of spirit entity that he refers to. He went to visit a psychic around that time by the name of Betty Shine, I think the name is. In fact, he talks quite a lot during that time of various spirit entities that he communes with. Although later works tend to downplay the theosophical connection, his early works stated explicitly that he believed himself to be guided by a group of entities, which included Wong Yi Li, Jesus, and a character called Rakozki. Now, this is a particularly strange name, but it's one who's actually identified as an entity by a very prominent theosophist called Alice Bailey some decades earlier. So they both referred to the same name and the same alleged spirit entity that they were both claiming to be in contact with. Alice Bailey actually spoke of this same entity, calling it Lord of all creation or civilization. And Icke also claimed to be in contact with other spirit entities too. In his book, Truth Vibrations, from the early 90s, Icke wrote, and I quote from his book, "Some of the communications come directly from the consciousness, which has the awesome responsibility for easing in and guiding the new age of Aquarius, the Lord of civilization and the Lord of the seventh ray, one of the energies we will soon be receiving at a much increased power." And he talks in some length of that book about those kind of beliefs. He goes on to explain his belief that the solar system is controlled or ruled by the solar logos, who works with the Lord of the Rays to control spiritual development. This is the kind of thing it says in the book. I'm paraphrasing though. He says that the Lord of the Rays have become known as ascended masters and are supported by other ascended masters behind the scenes. This is a reference to Alice Bailey's galactic logos, and Icke's descriptions of these rays, the seven rays, are actually the same as Alice Bailey's, the prominent theosophist. Icke never later disavows any of those beliefs, in fact. He's never retracted any statements saying, "I no longer think those things. I made some mistakes at the time. I'm not in contact with spirit entities anymore." He never makes any of those claims. There's no record of him making anything like that. But he does later on, in later books, he tends not to mention those things so much. Although he does actually make reference to things that still support that kind of ideology, although he doesn't explicitly state them so obviously. He's become much more well known for his belief in reptilian humanoids. I think most people, if you talk to about David Icke, they would probably know him as that, the lizard believer, I think. And he very much doesn't see that as a metaphor. How he describes that is a very literal understanding that there are these bloodlines of reptilian humanoids, very much like some people believe in the Nephilim, that there were these extraterrestrial, alien-like creatures who at some point bred with humans, and that their bloodline, as a result, have been secretly controlling humanity for many thousands of years. And so that's very much his big belief, or one part of it at least. It was in his book, The Biggest Secret, that came out on the cusp of the millennium in 1999, that he presents his now infamous theory of these reptilian humanoids, and the idea that the Illuminati are a race of extraterrestrial reptilians who only assume human appearance. He claimed, in that book at least, that they came from a star constellation such as Draco, or something called the Zeta Reticuli, and that they feed on human emotions. It's claimed that one of the major sources of inspiration for his reptilian humanoid beliefs came from a book by a guy called Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote a book called The 12th Planet that came out in 1976, which claimed an alien race called the Anunnaki. They came to Earth and took control of society. Now, his evidence for that, Sitchin's evidence, comes from what are very disputed and controversial translations of very ancient texts, and really what many claim to be revisionist histories, or a kind of pseudo, I suppose you call it, trying to think of the word now, a pseudoscience of sorts, where they are interpreting very old symbologies, like hieroglyphics, for example, Mayan calendar script, those kind of era, things from thousands of years ago. Well, there's no one alive anymore who can decipher accurately what those symbols might mean. And so, they will look at the different symbols and interpret them. But of course, they can be wildly interpreted in many different ways, and have been. And there's, of course, many disputed accounts of what they might mean. And very much there's this prominent belief that there were, and there were many others that also adhered to similar beliefs, as well as Sitchin and Icke, that there were this ancient alien race that had come to planet Earth, and that they had this advanced technology, and then that's how they were able to build so many ancient monoliths, so many ancient superstructures, that we don't totally know, to be honest, how they were constructed without the use of modern technology. I mean, there are wildly different accounts. There's lots of different theories as to how they were able to do that. And we don't know. I mean, some of the theories are more credible than other ones. But, just because we don't absolutely know what happened thousands of years ago, that's not then necessarily proof that there was this sort of alien race that appeared. But nevertheless, it has become quite a popular theory amongst some people, and it's become, increasingly popular over the decades as a very new age belief. And I think there's a lot of people that sort of believe that for various reasons. But I think with Icke, he became famous for conspiracy theories. And there seems to be potentially some credibility about at least some of his ideas. And no doubt they've become more widespread, and he's got a big following from that. In fact, he became extremely, very successful post-millennium. I suppose after the 9/11 thing, which was very divisive, and many people had different theories about what the real reasons were for that. And very much he and many other conspiracy theorists at the time became much more popular and publicized with many books and films. And you see, a whole industry of such things on the internet. And there are different claims about different secret societies and hierarchical power structures and mystery beliefs and all sorts of things like that he throws into it too. And so you've got on the one hand with like some sort of theorizing about some things that could have some degree of credibility. Well, it's got a wide range of lots of different conspiracy theories, actually. Some of which could be quite credible and other things more disputable and perhaps not. But then he throws in with this all the beliefs in the reptilian humanoids that just seems to any rationalist just, quite bizarre, obscure, and quite irrational, quite ridiculous, To me, at least, I don't see any kind of proof or evidence for any such thing like that. It could be that sometimes people may behave in an alien or alienated way. Sometimes we can. But the idea that anyone has a distinctly different biology to other people, lacks any kind of real credibility or any evidence to justify it. And equally, the idea, that any of these spirits that he was channeling at the time, that there's anything positive from that, I don't see any kind of evidence for that, really. It's interesting that over the years that he seems to have distanced himself from that more. He's never disavowed any of it. He's never retracted any statements about that. But he has sort of put that in the background more. But he still does have a very New Age type belief. He never says that he has a belief in God in particular. It seems to be different spirits that he's very interested in. Very much his early beliefs in the early 90s seem to be very much like the Church of Spirituality, I think it's called, where they have seances, they talk to the dead, and, it's very much that kind of thing, isn't it, really? Something I've never done, never believed in personally. I didn't for many years as a atheist and a rationalist. Back in those days, I suppose I saw all kind of supernatural phenomenon as being irrational and unscientific and just not justified by any evidence. Over the years, I became more of an agnostic, and that progressed into being more of an agnostic theist, in fact, coming to have a belief in God. So I suppose today my reasons for not entertaining different spirits, not doing seances, not channeling different spirits, not trying to commune with the dead or with those that have died years ago. My belief in not doing that today, I suppose, is that it could be dangerous, that I don't want to sort of put myself under the influence of things that I don't understand, of things that could be corrupting potentially. And I think, why would I want to do that? And that, for me at least, comes from my belief that there's a God, and I believe in praying to God, and I don't believe in praying to any spirits, really. But I never did when I was an atheist either, actually. But for different reasons, actually. Just because I didn't believe in such things, I guess. I suppose I'm more kind of agnostic, and I don't know that there are dangerous spirit entities that can influence people. I suspect there may well be, and that we should be cautious about those kind of things and what we give our focus and our time and our energy to. Because that's true anyway, though, when we consider how other people influence us and how the products and the creations of other people do too. Whether that's the type of media that people create, types of books or artwork or music that can influence us too, So we should be cautious about, the type of things that we engage in, and whether we're doing that consciously and mindfully, and whether we are assessing, what kind of influence they have, what kind of message that they have, where's that coming from, what kind of ideas are they promoting. And so, it's important to assess any kind of spirit and how and what kind of effect that's having on us. I do believe that there are spirits that have an effect on us, because I certainly believe that we all as humans have a spirit. So I suppose in that sense, yes, I sort of do believe we all can and do potentially influence each other's, and I think there can be good and bad in that. Whether there are spirits in an otherworldly, other dimension that don't have form, that are somehow in a different realm, or it's possible, and I don't deny it could be, and I don't have any firm evidence to support that. But then at the same time, if I don't see evidence for or against things, I like to try and be scientific and keep an open mind, at least to the possibility of it. It might be, it might not be. But I'm still at least mindful that it could be there, and that I don't want to give my energy and time to something that could well be quite negative and quite draining and quite, even nihilistic perhaps, But I think, I would be cautious about anyone and anything actually, and how we treat anyone really, and how we allow anything to influence us, I'm just kind of very wary, I suppose, of a lot of his beliefs. While I accept that there might be some truth in some of his theories, I suppose one of my concerns is that it's quite possible that his type of New Age beliefs could well influence other people that are asking serious questions, and they've got their doubts about society and the morality of it, and what are the purposes of life and our society, and what's really going on, what's motivating different groups of people to behave and how they are, and that maybe that they are maybe even unconsciously or on some level being influenced by this sort of New Age agenda that he has. I suppose that's one of my sort of concerns, but also the fact that some of his actual realistic criticisms, the fact that there could well be other people and secret societies that have either good or bad agendas, that there are unequal distribution of resources and various things in society, that genuine criticisms could be tarnished actually by having this sort of pseudoscience of these kind of reptilian humanoid theories. I don't like the idea of that sort of theory in general anyway, because my belief is that we are one humanity and we have one biology, and that we have similar emotions. We've got the same fears and sorrows and joys and the same needs, the same sort of basic needs that we have in life, for food, shelter, for energy, even for beyond that, compassion and the need to sort of have relationships with other people in life. And so I see us as having that one humanity, and that sort of connection to having a unity of biology, but also of psychological and emotional needs too. Now, I'm not saying that we always do live up to that. We can certainly be alienated. We can go through great hardships in life where we then are in a position where we struggle to connect with other people. If you've been betrayed and hurt by others, of course it's much harder to trust other people in life. It's much more easier to shut yourself off and to sort of be overly self-defensive and wary of other people and mistrusting and cynical. Of course it is. And, many of us have been and do that sometimes, and and I'm not saying that we can't all sometimes be selfish and keep things to ourselves, and there's all sorts of things we could do to help and support other people much more. Of course we could. There's an alien-like reptilian in all of us, if you like, but that's just a sort of metaphorical description of it. Sometimes we do all sometimes behave, separate and cut off and, outside of other people, perhaps for many different reasons, that we've been hurt by others in the past, that we're motivated by selfish desires sometimes. There can be good reasons why we might want to be separate from some people. If we've been hurt in the past and we need time to heal, or need time away to reflect on the world, away from the world's influences, to get to know ourselves and to spend time, there can be good and bad reasons for having and wanting to have time separate from others, even for a long period of time, and I recognise that. But I just think this whole idea that there is a literal group of anyone that is entirely separate or alien, I think that's a really deeply divisive kind of ideology. And I'm very wary, mistrusting of that kind of idea, really. And I just think that we are one humanity, whether we all recognise that or not. We don't much of the time. Sometimes we see the divisions too often, whether they're religious, whether they're economic, or to do with our age, profession, our race, our class, our age, our sexuality, our different beliefs. And there are many different divisions, but at the same time, it's also so important to recognise the common ground that we also have and the unity of humanity and the brotherhood of man. The fact that we do all live on one planet, and the fact that we all, we've all got the same biology and the same basic needs and wants, emotionally, psychologically. And I think they're really important things to recognise, although there are many divisions and separate things too. I don't want to sort of shy away from looking at those differences, and they are important, but that shouldn't allow us also not to see those areas where we do have common ground and we have got things, despite those differences, still that unite us as well. And so, I'm wary, one, about this kind of concept that there's this sort of alien type group who have got sort of a separate biology, but also this idea as well, too, that there are people with some kind of extraterrestrial superpowers that don't have somehow the same limitations that we all have. Because, whether we think of people as ascended masters or not, I find that concept a little bit kind of idolatry and sort of giving some people almost like too much status, as it were. And that I just kind of like to think simply, really, that we probably all have some things that we maybe excel in and other things that we have faults in and where we struggle in. No one can be an expert in all different subjects. There's such a vast number of different things, aren't there? Whether that's in, our ability to be social and network, our artistic abilities, our scientific understandings, our ability to dress and perform, to articulate, our linguistic abilities, our abilities in such a wide variety of different spheres of study. Some people excel in academic things, other people are good at socialization and networking and have a good psychology and good repertoire or good charisma of talking to people. Other people have got a good physical, athletic ability, perhaps. There's a whole spectrum of different kinds of subjects, and no one can be expected to excel in all of them. The point I'm just making is that we all have some areas where we're not that good at, to be honest. You can't be good at all the things. You take a scientist and maybe they can't write you the best poem or cook you the best meal, or sing a song or dance as theatrically as maybe someone else could. We've all got different gifts in life, and I think that's what makes us human. We've got different flaws and areas that we struggle in, and different things that we perhaps are better at as well. So no one's an ascended master at everything. That whole idea, to me, just does not it doesn't resonate as true with my own life experiences and the different people that I meet. I've met people from such a variety of different backgrounds, and people do tend to be pretty good at the things that they've paid attention to and that they've devoted sufficient time and energy to over the years, you know. And so therefore, as a result of that, we are reliant on other people, you know, to find out information. You know, one expert in one field is more reliant on an expert from a different field because they haven't been able to study those other things to that sufficient level where they're. So that's what makes us needing to sort of share information and trust each other, you know, because otherwise, you know, we could just study everything if we had unlimited time and abilities to do it all. And if we were ascended masters, we wouldn't need to be so dependent and reliant on other people in our life. You know, we wouldn't need that. And of course, we do need to sort of work together in life. We need that balance of sort of having time alone, but also relying on each other as well. And so, anyway, those are my sort of general reflections and reasons why I've got concerns really about a lot of David Icke's theology. And there does very much seem to be a theological underpinning to his own beliefs and that. But, you know, except many people that go to visit him, they may have an interest in some of his kind of more broader conspiracy theories without necessarily believing in all his theologies. But nevertheless, you know, I don't know. Each man to their own must choose what they believe in their heart and must be guided by what they feel is right morally for them, I guess. And, you know, in terms of conspiracy theories, of course, there are many theories that actually have been proven to be true and have been evidence-based, and many other things that have been proven false and are fraudulent, despite being having many adherents. And there are many other grey areas where there may be disputed evidences, and there's probably a larger amount of subjects like that, of course. And if you look at conspiracy as a sort of more general term, you know, in criminology, it's just a widespread term that can relate to anyone or any group of people that are just trying to use something maliciously or fraudulently against others. You know, something that commonly happens, in fact. But you have to assess, of course, based on evidence, whether something seems reliable or not. Now, in some cases, that's easier to do than in others, because, of course, in other times it's quite hard because there's disputed evidences, and it's actually very difficult in some fields, actually, to know. In other things, it may be easier to know, but nevertheless, it's a fascinating sort of field of study. And I've sort of got to the end, and I'm rambling now, so that's the conclusion of my sort of general thoughts.